Big Les's League, an all rugby league experience. Hey legends, Big Les here from the Big Les's Rugby League podcast. Just want to come on here and do a quick little disclaimer. Any signings that have happened over the past 2 weeks, we will not be aware about on the podcast. We did record this one 2 weeks back, and I've scheduled it to come out over the next few weeks. So any signings that have happened in the past 2 to 3 weeks, we will not be aware of those signings on the podcast. Without further ado, though, let's get straight into it. Part 3 of the season reviews. Can't wait.
Now, let's move on to the Newcastle Knights. We finally scrape into the 8, mate. Let's get into it. 12 wins, 12 losses. As we said, that 12-12 record could get you into the 8. Well, it got the Knights into the top 8. 470 points scored, 510 points conceded. Comparing that to their previous season when they finished 5th after Callum Ponga absolutely blew them off the park and had some great footy. He seems to have, done that in spades a little bit this season, but definitely not to the extent of 10 in a row. What was your read on the Knights this season?
The Knights were just an odd team that managed to slip into the 8 for me. They were very 50-50 hit and miss, I think, throughout the season. They did start to catch fire. Not like 2023, but started to string things together. But yeah, just inconsistent, really, for the Knights. I think, again, leading a little bit too heavily on Kalen. So I think for the periods that he was out, we really noticed. And then when he was back as well, we could see the impact that he made. But yeah, just a up and down season in a way.
Yeah, it was. And I think that, and look, we even said it here earlier in the podcast, the exception to the rule in regards to their halves. Obviously, chopping and changing their halves pairing consistently throughout the year. No other team would be able to crack into the 8 for me, or at least some maybe. Obviously, the Knights did it, but it's very rare for a team to crack into the 8 with the amount of times that they had changed their halves pairing throughout the season. I think they, on average, they had a different halves pairing every 2 to 4 weeks, which is just absolutely insane that we're talking about them sitting in the top 8. Obviously, with a little bit of a season snapshot for them, they had in their first 10 games, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they had a 50% record in the first 10 games. They obviously had a 4-game winning streak between round 8 and 11, beating the Dolphins, Warriors, Tigers, and Titans. Eels and Raiders, they had a 2-game winning streak there, a 3-game winning streak, South Titans, Dolphins, which ended up pushing them into the 8. Look, really, really interesting season for them. And look, as I said, not many other teams would be able to push into the 8 with the amount of times that they had changed their pairing.
Yeah, they're chopping and changing their halves with some serious head noise for them. It was outstanding that they actually made the 8, like you were saying, just with the amount of changes they had. It's just weird with them and the whole situation with Kalen Ponga, because I feel like they can very, very much fall into just playing Kalen Ponga ball, where it's just get the ball to Ponga, he's going to do something, let's hope for the best. But at the same time, I think that could be an absolute detriment to them as well. Teams could obviously read, set up for all that, and there's only so much one man can do, even if it is Kalen Ponga. They managed to string it together though, and he was out for a period of time. So, and weirdly enough, I think during that period of those couple wins that you were saying, might have been a period when Kalen wasn't actually playing for them either. I think when he'd gone down with the broken foot, where they started to expand their creativity a little bit.
Yeah, so in that 4-game winning streak, Callum Ponga actually wasn't in the side, I don't think, until that last one. And David Armstrong, that was the big David Armstrong time when he obviously had come into that side and stamped his authority. The fact that he's going to the Super League next year is just absolutely bizarre that they haven't been able to keep him. But they've got Fletcher Sharp, who at the back end of the season proved to be a nice little treat there for their back line too. So well set up for next year or the next few years.
Yeah, that's it. Armstrong was a weird one. He came into that side, like you said, when Ponga was out, really, lit things on fire and went, oh, yeah, I'm worth a bit of coin now, and I'm 50 in the house bounce, and he was gone. And we didn't really see so much more of him after that. Fletcher Sharp, though, yeah, definitely a massive pickup. I just love the size that he's got, the power of his running and that. He's just, great. great watch. So you'll be interested, like I said, next season what they're able to put together. A few key players leading that team as well. But yeah, if they can get those halves solidified, that's going to be the big thing for them.
Well, mate, an odd year for the Knights, but I think what stands out to me looking at these stats, errors, they obviously had a really nice error count, 9.5 per game, which is close to a lot of those top sides with a low error count there. Completion rate was fourth best in the competition with 80%, but they scored the second least amount of points out of any team during the year with an average of 19.4 points per game. So a lot of those games being tight. That's insane, that number. 19.4. We have a lot of other sides in the 20s and 30s mark.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. But on top of that, yeah, it's a bit rough with kind of a few of those other stats there, with the tackle breaks being third, meters being fourth, and then those errors as well, completion rate being quite good. So not being able to convert it into points has definitely been a hindrance to them. They just haven't been able to do it. I don't know how much that comes back to just trying to throw the ball to Kalen. At least that's what it seems like, where it just hasn't really paid off and haven't been able to explore other attacking options. I think as well for them, without a Dom Young, he was the highest try scorer last year, I think, or he would have been very well up there. Not having those kind of strike options, I think, would have hurt them a bit as well.
Yeah, totally. Not having a guy like Dom Young out on the wing would certainly hurt. But then again, you look at the season that Dom Young did have, and we'll talk about it in a second. It's very 50-50. So maybe it is a little bit of a blessing and a curse, the fact that they had a Fletcher Sharp there. Obviously, Dom Young going over to the Roosters, just saving themselves a little bit of that error count that he did end up having. Obviously, a bit of trouble in the air, which again we'll talk about in a second. But I guess a little bit of a blessing and a curse. I mean, you look at those 2024 losses. Let's just read through this one for a second. Dom Young, Lockie Fitzgibbon, Simi Sasangi, Lachlan Miller, Farmanu Brown, Oren Keeley, Kurt Mann, Heimel Hunt, Jack Johns, Jed Cartwright. A lot of the young guys in there, but certainly a few big losses. Obviously, Fitzgibbon and Young stand out in that list. But yeah, for them to have that many losses, to replace those guys with some young talent, and then to get to where they did with a bunch of halves dramas is huge for their season.
Yeah, definitely. That is an extensive loss that they had. There's a lot of players coming out of your squad. So yeah, managing to do that is pretty elite stuff from them. It shows the future that they could potentially have. Like you said, making the 8 last season, making it again this one. So they could very well be up there again.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's going to be interesting. We've already talked about it in regards to this season, but next season, the halves, what they do there, what the actual halves pairing is going to be. I think a big part of them being successful again is going to be locking down that halves pairing. I don't think they can do what they just did here again next year. I think that if they do have a lot of question marks around that halves pairing, it could be a very tough year for the Newcastle Knights. What's your premonition? Who do you think, who's your starting Knights halves pairing for round one?
Oh, that is a tough question. When they change it every bloody 3 weeks and that, it is a little bit hard to get a preference there. I think Tyson Gamble, I think he needs to be in there. I somewhat rate him. I think he's got that competitiveness and a bit of mongrel in there, a bit of physicality that would be handy. So if anything, you'd have him at 6 and, trying to figure out who you're going to have at 7, if anything, would be the next thing. So I'm not too sure which way I'd lay with that.
Yeah, look, I'm sort of the same. I think Gamble needs to be in and around the conversation for sure. Obviously, Hastings, it looks like his time at the Knights could be done, maybe getting an early release there to go elsewhere. One guy that stands out to me, mate, is Will Price. I was impressed with him when he came onto the scene. There's a lot of talk that he might not be ready to take that mantle just yet, but certainly a guy that I'd probably be having around, going into this season, maybe even in a 14 jersey, just to get him that first grade experience, because it can't harm you at all getting a bit of first grade experience in a 14 jersey and getting ready to take on that role, maybe in a roaming lock sort of capacity. And he's played plenty of outside backs too. He can play fullback. So if there's injuries, he can cover a lot of those positions too. But Is Will Price in your sort of foresight for the halves pairing?
I wouldn't say as of yet. So he is a very exciting, versatile player, like you were saying, and he's got some serious X factor and skill about him. I feel like he'd need a little bit more time to develop, and whether that be, in the reserves or even potentially playing in a 14 role and just getting, that adding on that experience little by little. Definitely something in the future, but I wouldn't say up front. No, I don't think so.
Well, I think that only leaves either Phoenix Crossland or Cogger for the 7, which is going to be interesting. I'd much prefer Phoenix Crossland as a 9, to be honest. I got quite annoyed. I'm not even a Knights fan, but I got annoyed a little bit when they threw him into the 7 jersey because they'd worked so hard to, push him into that 9 sort of role. He played very well there. There was conversations about him playing Kiwis. He's obviously in the squad now. But, obviously moving him out of that the hooker jersey after pushing him so hard into that role. He played very well there. He had a breakout season there the year before. And then, the back end of this year, he's now been pushed into a 7 jersey because they just don't know what their halves pairing is going to be. I'd much prefer Crossland as a 9. What about you?
Yeah, I think I agree with you there, and especially the amount of time that they took to try to develop him as that 9, and like you said, had that breakout and has been performing great there. I think that's a position for him. Great that he's versatile and he can jump into 7 and do whatever else. But yeah, I think 9's for him. So, where your 7 comes from, not 100% sure. Cogger, he could potentially be that guy. Or if they look outside of the club, especially if, Hastings has kind of finished up. So, yeah, I think we've got a lot of questions there.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be interesting to see what they do next year. Keeping it back onto the review side, who is your shining light?
Shining light for me, it's really just hard to go past Kalen Ponga. While he was out for significant periods of time with broken foot and whatever else going on with him, his impact on that side is second to none. Like I said a few times now, maybe that's a detriment sometimes, but what he's able to do while he's out on the field for them is just elite. Whether it is, a full team effort, other times though, he just goes, boys, jump on my back, I'm taking this play, and he just pulls rabbits out of hats. He's elite.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I really rate Kalen Ponga, and a lot of people do put a little bit of, smoke on him and obviously say that he's not the player that he is and, that he's fallen off and things like that. But he consistently proves people wrong because he comes back and has these few game stretches where he's unbelievable. And a lot of that has been due to injury as well. Obviously been out at stages throughout the year, but he's been outstanding the times that he's been in this season consistently. My shining light's probably a little bit different. I'm going to go Dane Gagai. What a season he's had. He's been playing very, very good football over the past few years for Newcastle since he's come back there. But this season, he is one of the more damaging centers in the competition. He gets his way back into Origin after being booted to get the next generation in there. He just blew me away with how well he played and consistently. That was probably the biggest criticism of him after he left Rabbitohs to go back to Newcastle, was just a little bit of consistency issues. He was extremely consistent and very, very, well versed this season.
Yeah, no, I think he's been able to string together some really, really quality seasons. So last season he was elite. Like you said, now as well, breaking back into the Queensland team just goes to show how he's been travelling and how highly rated he has been. He's just so good. he's one of the best centers getting around, even though people would say he would be heading towards the later part of his career.
Yeah, totally, mate. He's definitely aging like fine wine. For me, the last one before we get into where Newcastle is going to be placed next year is Dylan Lucas. Fuck, he's had a season. To be considered a fringy back rower to now being a great back rower, a great center, to get into that Prime Minister's side as well. He's a rep player of the future, mate. I honestly think in the next 2 to 3 years, he'll be in that blue side.
Yeah, hopefully he's not going too well for that blue side. But no, yeah, he had an outstanding season for somebody that, wasn't even looking likely to be in that top, 17 week in, week out with players' injuries, people going down, and the versatility to be able to go from the second row into the centres and everything he was able to do. Some of the lines he runs as well were just brilliant. So yeah, no, he's going to be one to watch for sure. It's great to see him go well.
Yeah, mate, it's been unreal to see the trajectory that he's sort of gone on this year to obviously, as you said, be in and out of first grade, to only come in when there's injury, to being a staple first grader in this team. It has been huge, and it's been really great to watch. I've really enjoyed the footy that he's played too. It's been really, really nice to watch. Where do you see the Knights sitting next year?
Knights, I've got them sitting around 9th to 11th. A lot of that does fall back to everything with the halves that we've talked about, and how that's all going to play out. I think if they're not able to find connection and chemistry there, they might struggle a little bit. So yeah, I reckon they might just miss the 8 again. Oh, sorry, they might next year miss the 8.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. They just seem to always be that side that creeps in. I think if they sort this halves pairing situation out, they can be a top 8 side. But if they don't, I think they'll be a lot lower than what they were this year with the amount of headaches they had around the halves situation. I'm gonna go with give me 9 to 12. I think they just miss out. I think they get close to pushing in, but I think they just miss out. I think it's a nice sort of balance there. They could make it, they might not, but I think they will be sitting around that 9th to 12th sort of spot. We'll move closer and closer to the top spot, mate. Moving to the 7th team, the Manly Seagulls. What a season for Manly. 13 wins, 10 losses, 634 points scored, 521 points against. Mate, talk to me about the Manly Seagulls.
Manly Seagulls, they are one of my favourite teams to watch, honestly. And I don't know if that is all the brainwashing over the years, watching Hello Sport Boys talk about them, but they're just a fun team. And they, like I said, have put together quite a season. And they were beating a lot of the big teams out there. They were kind of a bit of a smoky, bit of a dark horse in that comp that they could have potentially, pulled things together. Didn't quite get there, but yeah, they were a great watch throughout the season.
They were, mate. They were unreal to watch. I particularly enjoyed seeing Tom Trbojevic get some actual decent string of games together. Yes, there was a few times where he was in and out of the team, but for the most part, he was in there for a long part of the season. It was great to see him just string together some consistent games of football. And towards the back end of the year too, playing some decent footy.
Oh, for sure. It's always good to see Tommy Turbo back out there. He's been up there as one of the most unlucky players over the last couple of seasons with injuries. I'd say he'd be a hop, skip, and a jump behind Ryan Pappenhausen when it comes to the injuries. Like, he's been that unlucky. So yeah, seeing him back out there, stringing together some games, causing havoc, scoring tries. Yeah, it's been great to see.
Mate, tell you what, hop, skip, and a jump. I don't think they'd be able to move much with the amount of injuries that they've had. Hop, skip, and a jump might be generous. But yeah, look, definitely, great to see both of those guys string some games together, at stages throughout the year. Attacking stats for the Manly Seagulls, they scored 25.9 points a game on average, which is the 4th most, which was really nice to see. Line breaks, they were 5th for line breaks with 5.3 per game. Tackle bust 31.1 per game, which is 14th. Meters, they had 1,441 meters a game, which is 8th. Offloads 6.6 per game, which is 16th. So not too many offloads there from the Manly Seagulls. Errors, they were 10.3, which is 7th. Completion rate 78% on average, which is 15th. So that is 3rd last there for completion rate. Very interesting. Points conceded, defense and discipline stats, 22.4 points per game conceded, 11th. Missed tackles, 36.7 missed tackles per game, which is the 5th most. Penalties conceded, 5.2, which is 8th. Sin bins, 6th there. That's 11th. No send-offs. Talk to me about what stat stands out to you the most.
I think it very much points towards them just being a bit of an attacking powerhouse. You're looking at that with the points per game, the line breaks, and that kind of leans towards their completion rate too, which has been interesting. It's not the greatest one going around, but while they haven't had the ball a whole lot, or compared to some other teams, they're able to capitalize big time on that and put points on the board. So. Yeah, they're electric in attack, that's for sure. I think that shows a lot of it.
I think a big part of that has been Luke Brooks and him coming into this side this year as well. What a huge inclusion, and a lot of people doubting Luke Brooks because he's Luke Brooks, and obviously the seasons that he's had at the Tigers and the amount of memes you see about Luke Brooks out there as well. It was great to just see him have a good season with a side that can push for a top 8 spot. Really, really great to see.
Yeah, it was fun to see him out there. I remember watching, I might have been some of the trial games and just seeing him kind of out there and going, oh, he's looking pretty good. And then the way that he played in that first game over in Vegas, just with the freedom and opened him up running game wise, it was just, yeah, it was great to see. And he carried that through, I think, a lot of the season, which is really nice. I can't imagine what it'd feel like for him playing finals footy after all this time and all the head noise and the memes and everything else that goes around it. But I think a lot of that just, the pressure that was off his shoulders, where he's not really the guy calling all the shots, really freed him up to, play the footy he wanted, or was given a bit more of a longer leash, and that eventuated in some good footy for him.
Yeah, 100%, mate. As I said, great to see Luke Brooks play some good footy, to get some, great games on his hands. His running game is so damaging, and it was a big part as to why Manly were such an attacking powerhouse himself, combining with Tom Trbojevic. I mean, that game in Vegas, you were just thinking, fuck, they could be a powerhouse if they want to be. DCE as well, pretty decent season from him. Obviously an up and down Origin series from him as well, but yeah, look, I mean, Manly club football wise, that spine was outstanding, and to not have Lockie Croker for a huge chunk of the year as well. Carl Lawton was your 9 for a lot of the season, and to just do so well with, pretty much, without Lockie Croker defensively, the impact that he has there through the middle. A guy that usually plays back row and a number of other positions as well. There's not really a position locked in for Carl Lawton anywhere, but for him to come back into the 9 and, for them to string some games together well with that side is really, really positive. It was always going to be dependent on how much of the time Tommy was going to be on the field as to their success, Manly, but definitely a few shining lights in this team. We spoke about Luke Brooks already, but have you got any other shining lights in this team?
Oh yeah, there definitely was a few that came through. Now I just do want to quickly touch on DC though. He is proper aging like a fine wine. That man is vintage. Yeah, he just keeps going season to season. But yeah, he was great. But when it comes to shining lights, I swear I just seem to pick back on players a lot. But I think one that came out was Lehigh Hopewadi. He had a bit of a breakout season. I think we're seeing a lot of potential with him and potentially the future of Manly moving forward with the different periods of the injuries that they had, whether it was Cole out, whether it was Tommy that was out for periods. He really stepped into those roles and smashed it. So be interesting to see how they are going to use him next year. But yeah, he was one that definitely stood out for me.
Yeah, totally, mate. Definitely a standout. Tolu Kula, bit of a strange year for him. Obviously a very up and down year. We thought that he was going to get to the heights of Origin at the start of the year, based off his previous year as well. Sort of didn't eventuate like that. Was obviously in and around the back line in certain spots, filling in where they needed him to. And then there was a stage there where he was out of the side too with injury, which then ended up leaving him sitting in reserve grade for a little bit and working his way back in that way. But look, I think that he definitely has a little bit of ways to go. It's going to be interesting to see how he goes in the Pacific Championships too, to sort of get a read on his mindset. He had a great game against the Dogs to wrap up. But yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see if he can get back to that trajectory of, when we're talking about him for those Origin duties and stuff like that.
No, for sure. Yeah, he's a bit of a strange one, and he did fall off a little bit comparison to guess, previous seasons and maybe didn't quite end up where a lot of people thought he would. I don't see any reason why he can't get back on the same track he was heading towards, though. A lot of talent there, and I think injuries definitely hindered him quite a bit. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So yeah, we'll be interested to see where we get him next year. But I think as long as he's fit and firing, he yeah, well,
Yeah, totally. And for those watching at home as well, we have been recording for about 3 hours now, so English might not be our strongest language. Going into the back end of this podcast, but we will try our best. Talk to me about Jake Trbojevic as well. It seems like he's on the slightest of declines. Defensively, he's been great. He's been a workhorse, still in that Origin side, but I just feel like we're getting to that stage of Jake Trbojevic's career where he isn't the Jake Trbojevic of 2-3 years ago, and he might probably slot into that forward rotation going into next year rather than being that staple 13.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think you're right. We are starting to see that slight little drop off. I'd say almost in a way like Tohu Harris to an extent, where they're getting on. They've been throwing themselves at people week in, week out. It's just eventually just going to take a toll on the body. You just got to slow down eventually. So still plenty left in the legs, but yeah, I think we are going to potentially. I don't think next season. I think next season he might be able to still hang on to that jersey without too many dramas. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I don't think there's any dramas around him starting, but I think he may start in the front row. I think that Jazz Tavanga coming into this team might take the 13, and then it sort of suits again that running style of play, similar to the Warriors. With this Manly side, obviously they do like to play that fast game of football. I just feel like with Jake Trbojevic at 13, yes, he's a great ball player, and he can get the ball out to the edge as well, but just moving. I just feel like he's slowed down quite a bit. He hasn't always been the fastest mover. Don't get me wrong, but I just feel like he suits more, the front rower type game. I think that he is a modern day front rower, and I think, as I said, with Jazz Tavanga coming into this outfit, I think you've got to take that opportunity with both hands and put him into the 13 jersey. He's a veteran as well, Jazz Tavanga, but he does move a lot faster, generates quick play the balls, has that experience at 9 where he can obviously, get the ball out to the edges quite quickly as well with that ball playing. But also as well, it takes a lot of pressure off Lockie Croker as well to not have to play 9 for the full 80 as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a premium having a player like that coming into your squad. So, yeah, like you're saying, Jakey, he's not exactly express on the old foot Falcons. He's not quite your Moses Leota motoring through, but you put him into that front row position, that kind of alleviates that problem. And with Jazz coming through, it does speed up that ball through the hands and gets them moving forward on the front foot. And covers that 9 position, worst comes to worst. So, yeah, no, it's a good pickup for Manly, and yeah, definitely an option for Jake as well.
Yeah, 100%. Another front rower that I want to discuss, that's probably another shining light in this outfit, Nathan Brown. Fuck, what a season that he had. Didn't have a club at the start of the year. Obviously, he was moving around quite a bit. Parramatta had let him go. He was pretty much sitting in limbo for quite a while. And then obviously gets that opportunity with the Manly Seagulls. And I have loved watching Nathan Brown, the intensity that he's brought into this side coming off the bench. He just idolises what Manly's about with that toughness.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he grabbed that opportunity with 2 hands and just took off with it, didn't he? He just every single chance he got, he just went that hard. Like you said, the intensity was way up there. It was great. Love to see him play this season.
Yeah, himself, but Taniela Paseka, I thought for the most part he was strong too. Obviously locked in till 2029 with no player or mutual options in there at all. So he's locked in long term. That's going to be an interesting one. I just feel like with Taniela Paseka, he's got so much ability. He's so strong. He's just an absolute unit. I remember I went with my old man because my old man's a Roosters supporter, funnily enough. So there's a bit of family feud there for you, South v Roosters fan. But we went to a Roosters game, Roosters v Manly, and we were sitting right on the sideline. And Taniela Paseka was training just beside us. The sheer size of the man, he is huge. He could literally step over the fence without having to lean on it or push himself over. He could literally just step over the fence if he wanted to. He's an absolute unit, but I just feel like he doesn't know that yet. I feel like he doesn't know how much strength and physicality he has and what he has at his disposal.
Yeah, no, he was one that was definitely, showing light for me as well. And like I said, the size of him, he's a mountain. He's massive. And you kind of saw that week in, week out, I think. Like one week he would just destroy teams through the middle, but then another week just not have quite that same impact. It kind of reminds me a little bit, I think I've seen Willie Mason talking about Xavier Williamson before. About just the size of him going, mate, you don't need to worry about anyone else. Look at the size of you. Everyone's going to bounce off you. And I think it's, kind of similar both for him. If he realizes and runs like he knows he's got that size, he's just going to destroy teams. So definitely good for Manly to lock him up for some time.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I totally agree. I think that they've definitely got to lock him. They have locked him up long term, but he's a guy that they've just got to instill that belief in. That he is 6'100", that he is an absolute freak of nature. He's got so much ability at his disposal. It's just about instilling that belief in him that he has that ability, and just seeing that from him next season is going to be huge. Where do you see Manly sitting going into next year?
Yeah, I think Manly can string it together again. I think they can crack the 8. I've got them 6 to 8. I think if I had to predict, I think they're going to be thereabouts. No reason why they can't potentially go higher, but I'm going safe for them to end up there.
Yeah, mate, I'm pretty much the same. I'm going to just put it up slightly and go 5 to 7. I think that they can pretty much, I think they do get into the 8. It's just about where they sit for me. Very strong side, not losing too much going into next season either. Only Carl Lawton and Jamie Humphreys, which sort of pretty much confirms that Gordon Chan Kum Tong takes the 14 jersey. And we obviously see Lockie Croker starting. But yeah, look, obviously they've still got a very solid team. I think they do finish in the 8 for sure. Let's move on to one of the best stories of the season, the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. Mate, what a season they've had and a journey that they've had too.
Oh, yeah, good for the doggies. Oh, I've been keen to talk about this thing. Yeah, it's been great to watch. Just it's very much been similar to the WAS movement last year. What we've seen with the doggies, just the belief, the way the fans have got behind them, the way that club is turning around. It's great to see. And yeah, they came very unlucky towards the end there, but to go from where they've been the last few seasons to landing where they did in the top 8, it's amazing stuff.
It is, mate. It is so good to watch. I am so excited to see where this Bulldog team goes next year as well. Not as too many gains as what they had, obviously last year going into this season, but certainly a very strong outfit. This team has played with each other, for a full season now. They've got that experience. They've been in finals. They have that finals experience as well. It is going to be outstanding to watch. They obviously finished 6th this season, which is so big. The previous season, they finished 15th. They had 7 wins and 17 losses last year. They've had 14 and 10 this season. Points scored 529, points against 433, compared to last year where the points scored was 438 and points conceded was 769. So a huge improvement in the points conceded. It has gone down by nearly 400 points, which is massive. They're the best defensive team out of any team in the competition, obviously, as the stats show you for this year. We'll talk about the attacking stats first, though. 22 points per game for the Doggies. They were 10th. Line breaks, 4.9. They were 8th. Tackle bust, 28.5 per game, which was last. So they're the last amount of tackle bust, which is interesting. Meters, 1,448, which was 7th. Offloads, 8.2 per game, which was 12th. Errors, 10.4 per game, which was 6th. So pretty decent in regards to the error count there for the Doggies. Completion rate was on average 78%, which was 13th. Defensive-wise, they conceded 18.3 points per game, which is the second least amount of points conceded. So obviously just sitting behind Penrith at the end of the year for the best defensive team in the comp. Missed tackles, 37.5 per game, which is third most missed tackles. So obviously the scramble D, which we'll talk about in a second. Penalties conceded, 5.6 per game, which is seventh. Sin bins, seventh, which was seventh as well. They do like this number 7 here, the doggy, so that might be an omen for them going into next year as well. And then send-offs, 0. Mate, talk to me. What stat stands out to you the most?
Oh, just for their defense today, let's just write Penrith off for a second. Let's just go with them being the best defensive team pretty much for the whole season. What a turnaround for them. That is outstanding. Yeah, it's great stuff. One that is a bit funny, I guess, is the missed tackles, but you get that when you've got Reed in there, Hooker, trying to tackle every single thing that moves. So you're going to end up with a couple of missed tackles in there, so that's all right. One that I actually, the attacking stats weren't quite as bad as I thought they were going to be. So I guess throughout the season, the Doggies very much had that iron wall for defence, but just couldn't seem to, put the points together in the strike. But it wasn't quite as bad as I thought. But yeah, their defence just second best, like you said. It was something that they could fall onto. Similar to Penrith, when everything else isn't working, they can just defend their asses off. So yeah, they're elite at that this season.
Mate, outstanding. That turnaround from being 15th all the way to 6th. That's nearly 10 points up the ladder. Defensive wise, they've gone from the worst to the best team in the comp as well, which is massive. Just a huge season here for the Doggies. In regards to a bit of a season snapshot, they started off very strangely. 4 wins and 3 losses in the first 7 games there. They obviously had the bye in round 8. They then went win, loss, win, 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 as they had a 3-game winning streak against the Dragons, Knights, and Eels. Lost against the Roosters after that second bye. They then had a 2-game winning streak against the Sharks and Warriors. Bye, Cowboys, and then round 21 to round 25, they had a 5-game winning streak there at the back end of the year. Broncos, Raiders, Dragons, Dolphins, Warriors. That Broncos Dogs game has to be the best game of the season. That was insane, that game of football, hey?
Yeah, that one hurt to watch from my side of things. But yeah, that was because I was going to say that earlier. My knock on the Doggies were, and a lot of people are saying, they don't quite have the points to them. But then they came out and did that to the Broncos at home, sold out at Suncorp, and everyone went, oh, fuck, they've got strike as well. So it's almost like Geraldo just kind of took the leashes off and went, okay, you boys can throw the ball around, because they were just spreading it out wide and doing all these wild plays, and you're like, shit, that's not so. No, it was unreal season, though. Especially those last couple games, the hype, or I guess throughout the whole season, but particularly towards the end when they were going on that bit of a streak, just the belief of the fans and everything. It was so good to watch.
Mate, the Bulldogs community makes me jealous. I wish I was a part of that little community there with some of the get-togethers they were having out on the streets after games. It's just such a great community. And let's just take a quick look at the 2024 losses, because I think it's a big point going into, when we look back at this year. They lost Averillo, Tavita Pangai Jr., Kyle Flanagan, Paul Alamotti, Luke Thompson, Corey Waddell, Braden Burns, Declan Casey, Michael Gabriel, who was one of the best guys coming through in the centres there as well. So they lost him. They lost Raymond Fatala-Mariner mid-season to the Dragons. And they also lost Harrison Edwards there, which is another forward that they had to the Cowboys. So much so under strength in regards to forwards there, the Doggies this season, which was one of the big sort of talking points. And I guess a talking point going into next year as well, just in regards to the forwards. They do sign this year Tom Amone, who obviously spent a bit of time in first grade, I believe, for the Dragons, and played some really good football. But he comes back over to the Dogs, and to Panua as well from the Roosters, who is the most versatile, one of the more versatile forwards in the competition too. Look, talk to me about just the belief in this side through the pack, because they've had one of the smaller packs in the competition. The criticism was too many utilities, and they, defend their dicks off and have the strongest defense in the competition.
Yeah, that's it. There was a big talking point coming into the season, like you're saying, just the size of that pack, and boy, did they prove more wrong. they worked so hard for each other throughout the season that, they just went after it every single game. Big one part of that, I guess, was Josh Curran. What an outstanding performance in season he had. The Kurt Mann as well. They were just elite there in that pack. So yeah, it was a very interesting one. They kind of showed a lot of teams that there was another way to do it. You don't have to have these complete machines with like your Payne Haas or whoever else might be there. You can have these smaller guys that are more mobile forward pack and still have these outcomes and results. So yeah, it was very interesting, and I think you might actually see more teams in the future start to adopt that kind of rotation.
We look at a lot of the teams in the competition now, the Cowboys, obviously the Warriors as well. Jazz Tavanga, Dylan Walker in their pack off the bench too. There's a lot of teams that are starting to adopt, having that smaller 13 in particular, like the Dogs do. But, yeah, I agree. I think it could become a more common thing where the forwards tend to shed a little bit of weight, or you do get these more versatile guys, that are a lot lighter packs, a lot more mobile packs, or the big guys, which is the scary thing, could become more mobile themselves. And then that's a real headache in itself. But certainly I think the game is evolving to get to that stage for sure. In regards to shining lights, you obviously talked about Josh Curran. I think that a shining light for me this year was Kurt Mann. He had a very strong season in his first year for the Dogs. Defensively, just came after every single contest. Very, very impressive. Kurt Mann, just, the foot speed and the quick play of the balls he was able to generate as well. For me, I thought he was going to be in the origin conversation too for the Maroons. I honestly had him in my 17 too, but certainly a strong season from Kurt Mann.
Yeah, he was elite. Like I said, he really got them rolling forward on the front foot. The play, the ball speed, the contact, everything that it was a part of was just top tier. A lot of people wouldn't have expected that from him as well. So clearly they saw something in him, and he slotted so well into the team. It was great to see him go well.
Yeah, and the versatility around the pack as well. He obviously can slot into a ton of positions for you. Played a little bit of 9 towards the start of the season when they were just sort of figuring out how to put him into this side, but really locked down that 13 jersey. And then Bailey Hayward too, I think has to be talked about as a shining light. What a journey. Obviously being a really high touted halfback in reserve grade to coming in and playing lock forward off the bench. Insane.
Yeah, it was wild, and he might have the thickest neck going around, I think, as well. But yeah, what a journey for him. There's such crazy different roles, but then to come in to that kind of role with those, the ball playing skills just adds a whole nother level of things. So they're starting to build a bit of depth in the Doggies. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do with him as well moving forward.
Yeah, totally. And look, in regards to how thick neck goes, I think I could definitely have him covered there a little bit. In regards to other shining lights, mate, Jacob Kiraz. What a season from Jacob Kiraz. And again, another guy that I probably had very close to making his Origin debut.
Yeah, I think he'd definitely be thereabouts. Hey, he was a weapon, just so consistent, versatile player as well. You put him in about 3-4 different spots in the team, but just showed up every single week with so much heart and passion for the jersey and the team and everything he was doing and everything he was part of. Try scoring machine as well. So yeah, no, great to see him go. He's had a couple, last season, a couple good seasons now, so he wouldn't be too far off some of those rep teams.
100%, mate. He would not be too far off at all from some of these rep teams. I think that next year, and look, it depends on if there's injuries and stuff like that, but I think he'll be very close to being in the New South Wales side. He was picked for the Kangaroos in that extended squad, but obviously pulled out due to injury. So that's to replace him quick smart. But I think that even Mal Meninga knows that he's going to be, a Kangaroo of the future for sure. What an absolute weapon. Very versatile. There's so many shining lights in this side, but we might talk about one more, and that is Connor Tracy. Wow. What a season from Connor Tracy there at fullback. And we didn't know where he was going to fit into this team either. We thought he was going to be a centre, coming into the season, but obviously ends the year at fullback and, really kept Blake Taff away from that jersey.
Yeah, no, he has been outstanding. Kind of floating around at the Sharks there. Wasn't really able to find a solid position and really lock down a spot there. Come over the Doggies, and yeah, he's grabbed that one position and never looked back. He has been so good for him. You're speaking earlier about the Broncos game that we saw. His performance in that game was just next level. Yeah, no, he's been one of the best pickups I've had for a very long time.
I think it's unfortunate that the Sharks were, they lost him as well, because what he was shaping up to be over there as well, and some of the games that he had at fullback when Will Kennedy was out suspended during that sort of period, I believe last year or the year before, was just next level too. So, yeah, Connor Tracy, massive year with all of those losses. And then obviously, a lot of the team playing together for the first time, a lot of guys bought externally. They did a very good job this year. Toby Sexton, who we'll briefly just touch on as well, and Matt Burton, those two playing some very good football. Toby Sexton, though, what a pickup for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, Sexy Sexton, he came in well. I got a mate of mine, he's a diehard Doggies fan, and look, can't say he was the most happy when Hutcho was out there playing. So when Sexton did come through and started doing the work he was doing, he was stoked for it. The short kicking game that he has is next level. Oh, it is great stuff to watch. So yeah, I think they'll be very lucky to hold on to him for some time.
Well, mate, you don't have to worry too much about a long kicking game when you've got Matt Burton, who can tow it 70 meters with ease. It's just insane. Yeah, but Sexton's short kicking game and the combination that he has with whoever his right back rower is, it was really stood out to me. Even when Jamin Salmon was in there for a stage when Preston was out, Salmon looked like the second best back rower in the comp when Toby Sexton was setting him up for tries and short balls as well. There was a game where Salmon scored 2 tries on that right edge too. So Sexton's definitely got a lot of ability. I know there's a lot of talk about Ben Hunt, and even we spoke about Ben Hunt too, going in there and taking that 7 jersey. But at the same time, you sort of want to just see how Sexton goes. And I think that Sexton could probably win them a comp if you wanted him to be honest. I think that he has that ability. I think that this side does have the ability, but it is going to be very dependent on who they sign during the offseason and obviously how this forward pack does shape up. Where do you see the Dogs sitting?
For Doggies, I've got them. I've got them making the 8 again. I think we're just going to see the momentum for them build and build, but I'm going to go between 5th and 7th. Hang on, no, 6th and 8th. Sorry.
All right. Well,
next season.
I'm going to go a bit of a big call here again. I'm going to go 3rd to 7th is my sort of bracket for the Doggies. I think they can crack the top 4 if they want to. They were very close to doing it in this season as well. There was a few weeks there where they were sitting in the top 4 and no one was touching them really. So I really like the Dogs going into next year. Again, just the experience they're going to have from that final series and the lessons they're going to learn from that. It's funny. We were all predicting them to be in the bottom 4 last year, and now we're talking about them being in the top 8 and even the top 4. So, big season from the Dogs. Very happy as a fan of rugby league to see them going well, and it looks like they could go even better next season.